The entire bar went silent, not the comfortable silence of people enjoying drinks, the terrified silence of people who know violence is about to happen and they can't do anything to stop it. Jimmy, the Hammer McBride, stood 6 inches from John Lennon's face, 250 pounds of Liverpool muscle and menace. A man who'd put people in the hospital for looking at him wrong. A man who owned half the illegal gambling in the city. A man nobody crossed. And John Lennon, 23 years old, barely famous, sat on his bar stool and smiled. "I don't pay cowards," John said quietly. The silence got deeper, more dangerous. This was March 1963. The Beatles were just starting to break nationally. They weren't famous yet, not protected yet, not untouchable yet, just 4 boys from Liverpool who played music and thought they were invincible. What happened in the next 5 minutes would become legend, not because of violence, but because of wit, courage, and the moment John Lennon showed everyone in Liverpool that fame hadn't changed who he was. This is that story. March 15th, 1963, the Blue Angel Club, Liverpool, 11 p.m. The Beatles had just finished a gig. Small club, maybe 200 people. They were tired, sweaty, ready for a drink before heading home. So they did what they always did after shows, went to the bar, ordered pints, tried to decompress. The Blue Angel was a Liverpool institution. Not fancy, not clean, but real. The kind of place where dock workers and musicians and criminals all drank together, because that's how Liverpool worked. Everyone mixed, everyone coexisted, as long as you minded your business and paid your tab. The walls were stained yellow from decades of cigarette smoke. The floor was sticky with spilled beer and things nobody wanted to identify. The bar itself was scarred wood, carved with initials and dates going back to the 1920s. Every Liverpool musician had played here at some point. Every local criminal had done business here. It was neutral ground, sacred ground, the kind of place where reputations were made and broken. John liked it, felt at home here. The Blue Angel didn't care that the Beatles were getting famous, didn't treat them any different than when they were nobody. The bartender, Mickey, still gave them the same cheap beer and the same attitude. The regulars still told them to turn down their amps when they played too loud. It was real, authentic, Liverpool. That night, the club was quieter than usual. Post-show energy had faded. Most of the crowd had filtered out into the cold March night. Just the hardcore regulars remained, the people who had nowhere else to go, or who liked the Blue Angel too much to leave. John sat at the bar with Paul. George and Ringo were at a table with some girls. Normal night, normal routine. Then Jimmy McBride walked in. Everyone noticed. You couldn't not notice Jimmy. He was massive, shoulders like a bull, hands that looked like they could crush bricks, face that had been broken and rebuilt so many times it was more scar tissue than skin. He wore an expensive suit that barely contained him, gold rings on every finger. The kind of man who announced his presence just by existing. Jimmy McBride had run Liverpool's protection rackets for 15 years, started as muscle in his 20s, worked his way up by being smarter and meaner than everyone else. By 30, he owned half the illegal gambling in the city. By 35, every club, every shop, every business paid him. Not because they wanted to, because they were afraid not to. He'd put 3 men in the hospital just that year. One for being late on payments, one for talking back, one for looking at him wrong. Jimmy didn't need a reason. Jimmy was the reason. That's what made him dangerous. Not the violence itself, but how casually he deployed it, like swatting a fly, like it meant nothing. Liverpool was full of tough men, dock workers, shipbuilders, men who worked with their hands and settled disputes with fists. But Jimmy was different. Jimmy enjoyed it. The fear, the power, the way people's faces changed when he walked into a room, the way conversations stopped, the way men suddenly found their drinks fascinating. He fed on it, needed it. It was his oxygen. He had 2 men with him, smaller, meaner, the kind of men who did the dirty work while Jimmy watched. Tommy the Rat Sullivan on his left, Mickey Burns on his right. Both had done time. Both would do anything Jimmy asked without question. That's how Jimmy operated. Loyalty through fear, control through violence. The bartender tensed. Regulars suddenly found their drinks fascinating. The girls at George and Ringo's table went quiet, because when Jimmy McBride showed up, trouble followed. Jimmy scanned the room. His eyes landed on the Beatles, specifically on John. He smiled, not a friendly smile, a predator's smile. He walked over. His men flanked him, stood behind John and Paul, blocking their escape route. Professional, practiced, intimidating. "John Lennon," Jimmy said. His voice was rough, years of cigarettes and shouting. "Heard you and your little band are making some money now. Had a hit record. Been on the radio." John took a sip of his beer, didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge the threat. "Yeah, we're doing all right." "That's good, that's real good. See, when people in Liverpool start making money, certain people expect their share. It's how things work, has been for decades, you understand." Now John turned, looked up at Jimmy. Paul beside him tensed, ready to bolt or fight, whichever became necessary. "I understand you think I owe you money," John said calmly. "I don't." The bar got quieter. People stopped pretending not to listen. This was about to get bad. Jimmy's smile widened. "You're funny, I like funny. But funny doesn't pay bills, John. See, my organization provides a service. We make sure bad things don't happen to good people. Your instruments don't get stolen. Your van doesn't get broken into. Nobody bothers you after shows. That's worth something, yeah?" "Sounds like you're describing a protection racket." "I'm describing business. I'm describing extortion." Paul grabbed John's arm. "John, maybe we should—" John shook him off, kept his eyes on Jimmy. "I'm not paying you. Not a pound. Not a penny. Find someone else to threaten." The entire bar held its breath. "You didn't talk to Jimmy McBride like that. Not if you wanted to keep your teeth. Not if you wanted to walk out of the bar under your own power." Jimmy's face darkened. The smile disappeared. This was the moment. The moment he usually grabbed someone by the collar and introduced their face to the nearest hard surface. The moment that kept people afraid, kept them paying. He reached for John's collar, but John didn't flinch, didn't move, just kept looking at him with those sharp, fearless eyes. John knew what everyone was thinking, that he was insane, that he was going to get himself killed, that this was the moment John Lennon's career ended before it really started. Not with a bang, but with broken bones and shattered dreams. But John had grown up in Liverpool, had seen men like Jimmy his whole life, bullies, thugs, men who made themselves big by making others small. And John had learned early that bullies only had power if you gave it to them. If you showed fear, they won. If you stood firm, sometimes, just sometimes, they backed down. Not always. Sometimes standing firm got you beaten, got you hospitalized, got you broken. John knew that. He wasn't stupid, he just didn't care. Because living in fear was worse than a beating. Compromising who you were was worse than broken bones. John had made a decision years ago. He would be himself, completely, honestly, even if it hurt, even if it cost him, because being anything else wasn't living, it was just existing. And John Lennon didn't exist. He lived. So when Jimmy McBride reached for his collar, John didn't flinch, because flinching would be admitting defeat. Flinching would be giving Jimmy the power, and John refused. "You know what I think?" John said quietly. "I think you're a coward. I think you make money by scaring people smaller than you. People who can't fight back. People who are afraid. But I'm not afraid of you, Jimmy, and I'm not paying you." Paul beside him was doing mental calculations. How fast could they run? Where were the exits? Could they fight their way out if necessary? Paul was a fighter when he needed to be, had gotten into scrapes as a kid, could throw a punch, but against Jimmy and his men, they'd be destroyed, absolutely destroyed. Paul's hand trembled slightly on his pint glass, not from fear of fighting, from fear of watching John get hurt. They'd been friends since they were teenagers, had written songs together, had built the Beatles together, were like brothers. Paul would die before he let John face this alone. But he also desperately wished John would just shut up, just apologize, just pay the money, just survive. Jimmy's hand stopped inches from John's collar. "What did you call me?" "A coward. Should I say it slower so you understand?" One of Jimmy's men moved forward. ready to teach John a lesson. But Jimmy held up his hand, stopped him, because this was interesting. This scrawny kid with the mop-top haircut and the smart mouth was either the bravest person Jimmy had ever met or the dumbest. Either way, Jimmy wanted to know which. "You've got some balls, kid. I'll give you that. But balls don't stop broken bones. Balls don't stop your pretty guitar hands from getting smashed so you can't play no more. You understand what I'm saying?" "I understand you're still talking instead of doing." That's usually what cowards do. Talk, threaten, make themselves feel big by making other people feel small. But you're not big, Jimmy. You're just loud. Paul looked like he was going to be sick. George and Ringo had stood up from their table, ready to jump in if this turned physical, ready to die with their friend if necessary, because that's what brothers do. Jimmy stared at John. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The entire bar was frozen, watching this standoff between a notorious gangster and a 23-year-old musician who apparently had a death wish. Then Jimmy did something nobody expected. He laughed, real laugh, deep, genuine. He threw his head back and laughed like John had just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "You've got some balls, Lennon. Some serious balls." He turned to his men. "You hear this kid? Calls me a coward to my face." The men didn't laugh, didn't know if they were allowed to laugh, just stood there, confused and tense. Jimmy turned back to John. "You know what? I like you. You're either the bravest kid in Liverpool or the dumbest. Haven't figured out which yet, but I like you. Does that mean you're going to leave us alone? It means I'm going to make you a deal. You don't pay me protection money, but you owe me something else." "What?" "Respect. You just disrespected me in front of everyone in this bar. Called me a coward. Can't let that stand. Bad for business. So here's the deal. You apologize, right now, in front of everyone. You say Jimmy McBride is not a coward, and I'm sorry I said that. You do that, we're square. You don't do that, I break both your hands and you never play guitar again. Your choice." The bar waited. This was the moment. John could apologize, save himself, save his career, say the words and walk away intact. Or he could refuse and pay the price. John took a sip of his beer, set it down carefully, looked at Jimmy and said, "No." Paul's hand went to his face. "Oh God." "No?" Jimmy's voice dropped. Dangerous. "You're saying no?" "I'm saying no. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. You are a coward. You make money by threatening people. That's cowardly. I'm not going to pretend otherwise just because you're bigger than me." "John," Paul whispered urgently, "please." But John wasn't done. "You want respect, Jimmy? Earn it. Do something worth respecting. Help people instead of threatening them. Build something instead of taking from people who built things. But don't stand here and demand I apologize for calling you what you are." The silence was absolute. This was it. This was where Jimmy McBride proved he was still Jimmy McBride. Still the man who ran Liverpool's underworld. Still dangerous. Jimmy's hands clenched into fists. His face went red. His men stepped forward, ready. But then something shifted in Jimmy's eyes. Something none of them expected. Respect. He looked at John. Really looked. Saw something. This kid wasn't posturing, wasn't trying to be brave. He genuinely wasn't afraid. He genuinely believed what he was saying, and he was willing to take a beating for it. That kind of courage was rare. That kind of honesty was rarer. Jimmy unclenched his fists, straightened his suit, and said, "You know what, Lennon? You're right. I am a coward. I've been a coward my whole life. Easier to take than to build. Easier to threaten than to earn. And standing here, about to break a kid's hands because he told me the truth? That's the most cowardly thing I could do." The bar gasped. Actual gasping. Jimmy McBride admitting he was wrong? Jimmy McBride backing down? This didn't happen. This never happened. Jimmy extended his hand. "No hard feelings?" John looked at the hand. Everyone watched, waiting. Then John smiled, that cheeky Liverpool smile, and shook Jimmy's hand. "No hard feelings?" Jimmy nodded, turned to his men. "Come on, let's go. Leave these boys alone. They've got music to make." He walked toward the door, but stopped, turned back. Lennon? Yeah? Don't ever change. World needs people who aren't afraid to tell the truth, even when it's dangerous. I'll try. Jimmy left. His men followed. The door closed behind them. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then the entire bar erupted, cheering, applauding, people rushing over to John, slapping his back, buying him drinks, telling him he was the craziest, bravest person they'd ever seen. Paul grabbed John's shoulders. "What the hell was that? You almost got us killed." "But I didn't. You called Jimmy McBride a coward to his face, because he is one." "John, you can't just say whatever you think to dangerous people." John grinned. "Why not? Seemed to work out." George and Ringo came over. "That was insane," George said. "Absolutely insane." "That was John being John," Ringo added. "Never backs down, even when he should." They drank late into the night, celebrating, laughing, replaying the moment over and over. The night John Lennon faced down Liverpool's most dangerous gangster and won with nothing but words and courage. Words spread fast. By the next day, everyone in Liverpool knew. John Lennon called Jimmy McBride a coward and lived to tell about it. The Beatles weren't just musicians. They were fearless. They were real. They were Liverpool through and through. Jimmy McBride never bothered them again. Never asked for money, never threatened. In fact, he became a fan, would show up at Beatles shows, stand in the back, applaud, tell people, that Lennon kid's got something, respect, real respect. Years later, in 1967, Jimmy quit the protection racket, went legitimate, opened a construction company, built things instead of taking from people who built things. When asked why, he said, "Some kid in a bar told me I should earn respect instead of demanding it." Figured he was right. John never knew, never heard about Jimmy's transformation. But that's the thing about courage, about honesty, about refusing to compromise who you are even when threatened. You never know what impact it has, what ripples it creates, what changes it inspires. The Blue Angel Club closed in 1975, but people still talk about that night, March 15th, 1963, the night John Lennon refused to back down, the night he showed everyone that fame hadn't changed him, that he was still the same fearless Liverpool kid who said what he thought and didn't care about the consequences. That's the John Lennon story that should be told. Not just the peace activist, not just the musician, but the 23-year-old kid who looked a gangster in the face and said, "I don't pay cowards," and meant it, and lived. Because sometimes courage isn't about fighting. It's about standing firm, speaking truth, refusing to compromise, even when it's dangerous, especially when it's dangerous. That's real courage, that's real power. That's John Lennon.